Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Children, Families and Education Decision Meeting. My name is Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education, and I'm chairing this meeting. It is being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Little bit of housekeeping and safety information. If the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room. By the stairwells, don't use the lifts, and assemble at this time of year at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street, past the university's Park building. And if you did sign in at the reception desk, please sign out when you're leaving the building today after this meeting. Regarding the live streaming, everyone who's speaking today in today's meeting will be on camera. Press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they don't want to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you have finished speaking. Okay, we'll start with introductions. So I'll start on my right today.
Debbie Anderson, Head of School Improvement and Early Years, and I'm here to present the SACRE annual report.
Welcome.
Alison Edgerton, Group Accountant for Children, Families and Education Finance.
Welcome.
Angela Mann, Finance Manager for Children's Families and Education.
Sarah Daly, Director of Children, Families and Education.
Scott McKechnie, I'm Independent Chair and Scrutineer for the Safeguarding Children's Partnership and here today to present the yearly report.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Mark Jarrett, Head of Service for Children We Care For, here to present the annual reports for fostering and adoption.
Thank you.
Hello there, I'm Sam Bushby, Deputy Director for Children and Families.
Karen Martin from Democratic Services.
Welcome everyone to the meeting. The next item is, or the first item is apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor George Fielding, who has a work event that is on at the moment, and we have received apologies for lateness from Councillor Dyke from Portsmouth Independence Party, who is stuck in some traffic, I believe, and is on his way. Any other apologies?
No, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So we now need to go on to the item 2, which is declarations of members' interests. I'm the only member who's here at the moment, so I have a standing declaration of interest that I am Vice Chair Governors at Craneswater Junior School, but I don't think there's anything on this agenda that makes that a tricky situation. And there are no deputations at this meeting. So we'll go straight on to the report. So item 3, which is the school funding arrangements. And that is over to Angela.
Thank you.
By the way, usual caveats. We don't need to read the whole report, just highlights. We have all read them and we also had the briefing. But if you just pick out the highlights, that would be really useful. Thank you.
Yes. So the report, a similar report went to Schools Forum last week. And so there's different approvals and endorsements that each body is able to take. So I suppose an update from Schools Forum was that everything was approved or endorsed apart from the de-delegation for the school improvement for secondary schools. So that didn't go forward. And that is a decision for Schools Forum. And in the report you are asked to sort of note our proposal. And you know, the next steps for that, if Schools Forum don't approve it, could be going to Secretary of State for approval. So that's an update really on where we are with Schools Forum, and the report just takes you through all the different funding changes and the consultation that we did on those funding changes as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Angela. And I attended the majority of that meeting, but I was there for that bit. So I did listen to the dialogue around that. So thanks for that update. Just before we go on, I see Chris has arrived. Do you want to introduce yourself? I understand that there's traffic challenges.
Hello, Councillor Chris Dyke, Portsmouth Independent Party for Paulsgrove. Do apologise, it's just taken an hour and 10 minutes to get from Drayton. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well done for getting here. And actually, unlike the last meeting, we have just started, so you will get to ask questions on any of the reports or make contributions. I know I'm putting you on the spot, and you didn't hear Angela go through the report. But are there any questions that you have over the report?
No.
The first item.
No questions, no.
Thank you. So, thanks for that update and the decision in Schools Forum around the de-delegation of secondary schools. So what I will do then is to go through the recommendations just so that we check that we're getting the right ones. So I note the DfE's proposed changes to school revenue funding for 24-25 as set out in the report. Approve the proposals for implementing the local funding formula arrangements as set out in this report, in particular to implement the NFF rates for both primary and secondary schools in 24-25, which is Appendix 1. Implement a minimum funding guarantee of at least 0% and up to 0.5% subject to affordability for 24-25 as set out in paragraph 5.22, and the methods of managing affordability which are detailed in 523 to 527. Endorse the proposal not to set up a falling rolls fund for 24-25 and endorse the growth fund criteria as set out in Appendix 2, with primary and secondary values being brought to the January 24 meeting for approval. And note the recommendation that maintain primary schools approve the de-delegation of funding to support the education functions as set out in section 7, but not the secondary schools. Have I covered everything? The recommendation to maintain secondary schools approve the de-delegation of funding to support the education functions. So that's a bit.
Yes, so it's just noting the fact that the report does recommend it. But
Okay, the recommendation is there, but the Schools Forum has decided not to. Okay, clear. Right, thank you very much for that. We will go on to the next report, which is the DSG, the Dedicated Schools Grant Quarter 2 Monitoring and Revised Budget. Alison.
Thank you. So the report details the forecast position of the Dedicated Schools Grant as at the end of September 23, which is a overspend of £32,000. The details for the reasons of the overspend are within the report, but there are a couple of things that I just wanted to note. As the report is based at the end of September, we wouldn't normally have received the class lists for all our high needs funding to schools, so they're forecast on budget. We've now got those in and we're actually in the process of making those payments and reforecasting. And the early years block allocation was increased in July 23 and takes account of the January 23 census. The budget has been updated in line with the delegated responsibilities to include those changes within the quarter budget. It then goes on, the report then goes on to talk about the revised budget, which is based in the table in Appendix 1. And overall, the net impact of the budget adjustments would be a overspend of just under 18,000, and the proposal is that that would be covered from using the dedicated school grant balances. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I don't have any questions. I think I'm used to it now. It's taken me about 8 years to understand it, but I think I do. Chris, have you got any questions at all around that?
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add any comments at all? No, I think we're into routine with this now, aren't we? So thank you very much for that report. And I will go through the recommendations just for clarity. So we note the forecast year-end budget position for the Dedicated Schools Grant as of the 30th of September 2023, together with the associated explanations contained within this report, and B, approve the revisions to the 23-24 budget as set out in Appendix 1 and Section 8 of the report. Thank you very much. Thanks. Have you two got other bits of this? You have. Okay. All right. So, right. Thank you very much indeed. So, next item on the agenda is the Portsmouth Safeguarding Children Board annual report. And Scott, I'll hand over to you to present it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So, firstly, thank you for the invite to present the Safeguarding Children's Partnership yearly report for 2022-23. Just to remind that the local Safeguarding Children's Partnership is a statutory requirement upon the local authority area, and this report is part of those requirements which is stipulated under Working Together to Safeguard Children 2018. And just a reminder to members that the three statutory safeguarding partners, that's local authority, police and ICB, should agree on ways to coordinate their safeguarding services, act as a strategic leadership group in supporting and engaging others, and implement local and national learning, including from serious child safeguarding incidents. So that's just a reminder of what the high level requirement is of the partnership, and there's many other areas that are contained within it. I'm not sure if that's my microphone that's making that. Okay. So I took over my role as independent chair and scrutineer, the scrutineer aspect being a new addition to the role this time last year. But that also gave me the opportunity to review the governance, functionality and impact of the multi-agency safeguarding arrangements, but seek assurance around the effectiveness of those local arrangements to improve outcomes for children, their families and of course our communities. Portsmouth, I would say from that review, has a mature safeguarding partnership, a partnership that has good strategic level attendance and drive of members, as well as subgroups that are functioning well to drive the priorities and business of the partnership. The partnership has also been tested more recently in an Ofsted inspection of children's social care, and is also a partnership that's well connected with colleagues in Hampshire, Isle of Wight and Southampton across many areas, which you can see as part of page 10 of the report. I'm not sure what page that is in the bundle, but it's page 10 of the Safeguarding Children's Part report, as well as reaching over into other partnerships in the city itself. To start off with, it's probably worth me mentioning the pressures, particularly this is 22-23, okay, we're a few months on since the end of the reporting period, but the pressures that I'll always refer to as a safeguarding system and the impact that have, and that's the legacy of the pandemic, cost of living crisis, budget pressures on agencies, workforce recruitment and retention, increased demand, but with an increased complexity of need, as well as often organisational change, and we've seen the formation of the ICB during this reporting year period. But despite this, I see dedicated senior leaders setting the tone for delivery of the best service to children and families. Our priorities in this report reflect the issues that we're facing children and their families: early identification and support, neglect, family safeguarding, safeguarding education with a focus on adolescents, and the impact that our collective activity has. So I just wanted to highlight some of the key achievements for the areas shown, which is on pages 5 to 10 of the report. And I would like to mention a few. The first one being the introduction of a family support plan as part of a redesign of early help assessment process that was launched in January of this year. It is supporting families with services to provide targeted help and support to them, which is very prudent at a time of much need due to cost of living crisis. Guidance was produced for families and tools and training for staff to use, focus on relational and restorative practice. You'll see some of the feedback on the report, and a quality assurance framework is now being developed to monitor its effectiveness and implementation. Another area is I've observed the growth of the response collectively to both missing and exploitation. The Herda service has worked tirelessly to develop a pathway but also some operational connectivity so that the collective focus on the children who are at most risk, have the highest needs, are discussed in a multi-agency forum. Safeguarding education is a key area for the partnership. The Safeguarding Children's Partnership training team engage across schools in the city to grow the safeguarding culture. They provide bespoke support and training for schools who need this. Education link coordinators have also been introduced to provide the connection to Children, Families and Education Directorate, allowing identification of the most vulnerable children being a key aspect of that role, and then providing regular guidance and support to schools and families, often utilising the crossover into the family support plan. So that's all reported in page 5 to 10 of the annual report. The context of the poverty in the city represented on page 13 shows that free school meal eligibility criteria has seen a steady increase in the last 7 years, showing we're higher than the regional and national average, which links to the previous comments I made about deprivation. And page 15 to 19 gives an overview of the work of the subgroups, which is in effect the engine room of the partnership. In particular, the learning from monitoring, evaluation and scrutiny focuses on tracking key data and quality assured themed audits. Both work in tandem, and I hope you'll see the activity, the levels of activity and the scrutiny that have been adopted and continue to be throughout the yearly report. Contacts into the MASH during 22-23 have increased and continue in an upward trajectory, 43% increase since 2019-20. So that goes up from 12,924 to 15,192, with those referrals relating to over 11,000 individual children. The increase in demand for universal service or early help could indicate that more families in need of support post-pandemic and during the cost of living crisis. Certainly contributory factors to be considered. There were, however, a reduction in the number of children progressing to Tier 4 for children's social care, as well as a continued reduction in the number of children on child protection plans or looked after children during the year period. Details are provided of the regular MASH audits, but also the detailed audits in relation to child protection plans as a result of child safeguarding practice reviews and transition and obesity. So they're all audits that were completed during this year. And Portsmouth has developed a strong compact audit, which is a form of self-assessment against the 12 standards and relates to all services who work with or regularly come into contact with children, which is on page 24 of the report. This is reviewed and action plans produced by organisation, and the support is provided where required, and the summary of learning shared. This is a real strength of the city, I would have to say. Learning from child in practice, statutory duty is denoted, and the criteria at top of page 26 is one of our statutory duties that sits at the forefront of what the partnership does, following the national processes set out by the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel. 5 cases were considered during the annual report period year. 3 followed the route through to rapid review, which is part of that process, but no formal Child Safeguarding Practice reviews were agreed. So this is in line probably with the national context around the benefit of early learning from rapid reviews. And a big part of the role of the local Safeguarding Children's Partnership is to ensure the learning from audits, practice reviews and emerging themes and trends is translated into learning. The final 2 pages of the report sets this out, and again the strength of offer to the multi-agency workforce in Portsmouth is excellent. And finally, you'll see at the end of the report, on page 9 of the report, earlier this year, just before the end of the financial year, the Safeguarding Children's Partnership priorities were refreshed and a new strategy developed for 2023 to 2025. That's the 8 priority areas are reported on page 9 of the report. Some and I won't go into the detail of them, but if there's any questions, I can answer them, but they're not directly. That's moving forward.
Thank you so much, Scott, for that. report, and I think it's really important it comes to this meeting, where it's a public meeting which demonstrates all of that work that goes on within that board. And as you say, it's a statutory function, but actually there's different ways of doing it. And I'm really pleased to see that, you know, the things that you teased out around the whole system in Portsmouth. What's really heartening for me is I've been to about 4 different meetings this week, and the same things are being talked about because they are absolutely joined up, and the system should be reflected in different areas, and they are. And as you say quite rightly, we have very strong partnership working here, and I really appreciate the level of detail in this, which really allows us to be able to use that data in looking at some of these themes coming out, particularly in the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. We know that, but also it allows us to be able to use those to look forward positively and not just fall into a kind of narrative of, well, that's Portsmouth, and you know, there's a, you know, there was a cost of living there's a cost of living crisis, and there was a pandemic, because we know that we need to do everything we can to despite that, to give them the best opportunity. So it's a really good report, and I really appreciate your time coming in. I'm a bit of a fan of case studies in a report. So thank you for the story in there. It really brings the really good work to light. So that was my comment on it. Does anyone want to add anything or ask any questions? No? Obviously a sign of how good the report is. Thank you so much, and thanks for coming to present it. I really do appreciate it. And obviously it's an information report, so it's for noting. I don't have to make any decisions, but I absolutely hope that this will be an annual thing that comes to this public meeting, because it deserves that scrutiny and also celebration. So thank you. You don't have to stay if you need to go. Thank you. Okay, so we now come on to the next agenda item, which is the annual fostering service report. So over to Mark to present, I'm assuming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
This is an annual report, and it's a requirement under the fostering regulations. You've got the report, so I won't go through it in detail, but I'll just give you the highlights from that report. So in terms of recruitment, nationally recruitment is a challenge in terms of fostering. And, you know, I think the good news for us in Portsmouth is, despite that challenge and the challenge locally as well, we're actually doing not too bad, and certainly maintaining our level of recruitment as we have done over the last few years. So for the year 22-23, we had 237 inquiries, and from those inquiries, we had 22 mainstream foster carers who were approved. And that was an increase from the previous year of 11. Bearing in mind, obviously, the context of COVID within that period would have maybe impacted on those numbers for that particular year. In terms of the assessments, obviously, it's really important that from the point that we get an inquiry through to approval, that the assessment process is as obviously robust, but also as streamlined and efficient as possible. And what we do, certainly in Portsmouth, is we tend to complete our assessments within a good timely timescale, and certainly within the practice standard we set of 6 months. The other element that's really important for recruitment is marketing, and we've got a dedicated marketing officer who leads on recruitment, and year on year provides us with a clear strategy. And certainly over that period of time, we had a number of initiatives, including radio and TV campaigns, recruitment events, along with other things that are contained in more detail within the report. So as of the 31st of March, we had 225 foster carers, and that's remained fairly stable over the year, and sort of over a number of years in many respects. The range is fairly steady. Obviously, we're keen to improve on that and increase on that. But inevitably, you know, as you approve more foster carers, you also lose foster carers for various reasons, such as retirement. And we're also reasonably successful in encouraging foster carers from independent fostering agencies to come over to us, because I think they see the benefit that we provide in terms of good quality support within a really nice network. The support that foster carers get is varied, from groups to mentoring to a really good offer in terms of training. And certainly over the last few years, what's been really beneficial, I think, to our fostering cohort has been the Mockingbird approach. So this is a wraparound approach where you have a hub home leader who provides additional support to a constellation of carers. So in Portsmouth, we've actually got 50 foster carers who are part of a group of Mockingbird constellations, and we're looking to see if we can expand that further in the next year or so. And the feedback we get from that is really positive. So children really enjoy the feeling of being part of an extended family within that Mockingbird arrangement, and carers feel that they get additional support. And you know, at the moment we're struggling to find enough Mockingbird provision for carers who are showing interest, and that's proving to be a real selling point, I think, for Portsmouth. So that's probably it in terms of foster carers per se. The thing that we're keen to move forward on in the new year is finalising our fostering allowance and fees policy, where we are reviewing the remuneration that we provide for carers caring for our children. We had hoped to land that earlier, but there's been some complexities around that. But also being mindful of local authorities neighbouring us, also looking to improve their offer as well. And obviously also important for us to get good quality feedback from carers around some of that detail. So I think that's probably it in terms of highlights. Any questions from anybody?
Do you have a question, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, you say that there is 225 foster carers in Portsmouth. What percentage of that would it be if you had the optimal amount?
That's a really good question that I don't have off the top of my head. I mean, we've got, I'm just trying to think, in terms of children that we care for, certainly at the point of this report, there were 389 in our care. So, yeah, I mean, we're looking to always obviously ensure we've got in-house foster carers locally. I think from recollection, around 67% of the children in that year were with our in-house foster carers, which actually, when you look at other authorities, actually a really good offer. So our ability to provide care locally is pretty good. And as we know, it's really important because, you know, this is where their families primarily live, and this is where we are in terms of providing a wraparound service for them. Thank you.
Good question. And Chris, if ever you want to go along to any of the recruitment events, it's worth going because you get to meet a lot of the foster carers because they bring them out so that they can talk to potential people. I go along as much as I can because it's so fascinating, the stories, and also the positive outcomes of that are great. So yeah, thanks for the report. I agree on the marketing. I think it's really good. The social media stuff, the storytelling, the videos is really, really good. It's a strength, and I'm sure it contributes to the success. The only thing I would say is that whilst our numbers might not have gone up, they haven't gone down, whereas they have in other areas. And I think that's testament to the fact that there's a national trend about decreasing numbers, and we've kind of bucked that, even though we're not complacent and we carry on doing it. And I've said this before in this meeting, but Mockingbird was the first thing I signed off when I took over Children's Services. So I've always had a keen interest in that because that was my first report that I read. And I actually don't even think then we probably imagined the strength that, well, the strength to strength it has gone in such a short amount of time. And of course, we value all our foster carers, those in Mockingbird, and otherwise, because we need a range of offers, don't we, to meet the needs of the kids in the city. So thank you. Great report. Again, it's for noting, but I think it is really important that this excellent work comes to this forum and is actually recorded. So thank you. Next is item 7, which is the Adoption Agency Annual Report. Back to you.
It is indeed. So as with the fostering report, this is a requirement under the adoption regulations, so the requirement for an annual report. Probably worth, again, as I say, there's a detailed report there that I won't go through line by line, but I'll give you the headlines, but probably worth just pointing out the fact that we have an arrangement in terms of adoption whereby the child element of the work that we do in adoption in supporting children through to an adoptive placement is held within Portsmouth City Council. But in terms of the recruitment, assessment and support of adopters, that is held within Adopt South, which is our regional adoption agency. So there's a number of those agencies around the country. And ours is Portsmouth, Southampton, Isle of Wight and Hampshire. So I think that context is just quite important just for me to set out right at the beginning. This report sort of pulls together some of the Adopt South information, but also some of our local information. So it's worth noting, I think, in terms of Adopt South, that they compare incredibly well when looking at the other 31 regional adoption agencies. You know, the work they do is very timely and within, you know, expectation. Which obviously, you know, for children means that children are moving to permanency quicker, which is ultimately the most important thing. So in terms of Adopt South, they've actually got, certainly for that year, had the shortest adoption journey from beginning to end of all the 32. So very much to be commended for that. During the reporting period, in terms of Adopt South, so bear in mind this is the local authorities within that, they identified 228 children for adoption, and 35 of those were Portsmouth children. And in that period of time, 13 children from Portsmouth were adopted. I'm just looking through just to pull out some other key headlines. For us, so in that year, we had 19 children who had placement orders. So a placement order, just for clarity, is a court-decided order that says a child can be placed for adoption. And that was actually the same number for the previous year. So no significant change there, but, you know, a fair number. And what else should I pull out? So, yeah, I mean, again, looking at Adopt South, in terms of the assessment of prospective adopters, they approved 94 adopters in that year, and all within expected timescales. So they were, I think, the only adoption agency achieving that within the timescale set, which is pretty important, I think. In terms of, I think it's probably worth for adoption just articulating some of the areas for consideration moving forward. So some of the things that we'd identified that we wanted to improve further on, really. And that was really being even more aspirational, I think, for sibling groups and also for older children. So that for us was really important. And as part of that, we identified we needed to, I guess, improve our oversight of permanency tracking to make sure that we were giving every child the best opportunity for adoption where that was seen as, you know, appropriate, really. So work has been going on to do that. As well as some additional training for staff, just in terms of the permanency offer, particularly around older children and complex sibling groups. So, yeah, those are the headlines if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much. It's really good, really good report. And I know it's something that we have to do, but isn't it great to stop once a year and look and just see where you're at? Chris, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make on it?
Sort of same question, really, is the amount of adoptions that have taken place compared to what is needed?
Yeah, so we're pretty good in terms of, I think it's, I can't recall exactly where it is in the report, but, you know, in terms of identified need for an adoptive placement and us providing an adoptive placement within the Adopt South arrangements, we managed that in a really timely manner. So I don't think in that particular year we had to look outside the Adopt South arrangements. So sometimes where children have real complex needs or their complex issues around the children, we'll have to go further afield to potentially purchase adoptive placements from other regional arrangements, and we certainly didn't need to do that last year. So we're really timely in being able to place, and we're really good at identifying adoptive placements for children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No, thank you. Thanks so much for the report. Duly noted. So we come on to the final report, but last but not least, Debbie, the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, fondly known as SACRE, annual report.
Yes, so I'm the local authority officer that is linked to the Portsmouth SACRE. And SACREs have a responsibility for advising the local authority on its schools with regard to religious education. And they have a duty to publish an annual report which must be sent to the Secretary of State for Education as well as shared with wider partners. The Portsmouth SACRE Annual Report 2022-23 is based on a template from NASACRE, which is the National Association of SACREs, so it follows that template and standard reporting format. Our SACRE is very inclusive and moves around various venues, which shows that tolerance and respect for different faiths and those of no faith. And that can be shown by as I say, the different venues, Portsmouth College, one of our primary schools, and also the Al Mahdi Centre. SACRE has continued its work to ensure that our pupils in schools develop spiritually, morally, socially and culturally as well as academically. And that's been done in a number of ways. There's a SACRE monitoring group, and last year we put out a survey to monitor collective worship and any withdrawals from collective worship and RE lessons. We also monitored school websites and how our agreed syllabus, Living Difference 4, is being implemented. And from school websites, you can tell about the curriculum content and whether that locally agreed syllabus is referenced. We know that probably not as many pupils in our schools study RE at GCSE and A level, but those that do very well. Our SACRE has helped to develop a directory of places of worship and that schools and pupils can go and visit so that they can really experience and gain that respect and tolerance. And that directory of worship being published on our own website and the Portsmouth Education Partnership website is also now on a national RE hub as well, following some interest from other SACREs. So we also provide CPD, particularly for our primary RE subject leaders who are not generally specialists. So there are termly network meetings for them, which is funded through the local authority and the school improvement budget. And that enables teachers to gain a better insight, to develop their subject expertise, to think about how they're going to implement the locally agreed syllabus. So through the surveys that we've done, we found out that there wasn't major withdrawal, and it tends to be around if acts of collective worship or Christmas celebrations are actually taking place in a church as opposed to in the school, but it is quite minor, and we are due to repeat that survey after Christmas to see if that position has changed as the world develops and there are events around the world, so we're quite keen to do that. But I'm pleased to report that we haven't received any complaints about collective worship in our schools, and again, no complaints about religious education. I have a close working relationship with our professional advisor who works for Hampshire, and we have some joint representatives with the Hampshire SACRE. So we are looking forward to move on. I recently saw a webinar from the SACRE about how SACREs can effectively monitor schools, and actually the things that we're already doing were some of the examples that other SACREs are using as well. And when some of our schools have been offered some additional visits from that professional advisor to look at their RE and how they implement that and the teaching and learning of RE in our schools, 4 of our LA maintained schools immediately took up that offer, so they'll have half-day visits next year. So I thought that was really promising, that they're really keen to have that professional advice.
Thank you, Debbie, for that report. I think it's really interesting. I'm really interested in the survey, actually. I think that was a really good thing to do, and it makes it ensures that kind of responsibility that we have is scrutinised and there's good governance on it. I have to say, in that SACRE board, the attendance is phenomenal. It's one of the, it used to be, when I was on it, it used to be one of the best attended meetings ever. And I think what happens at that is that representation from across the city comes together in that, and that kind of common aim. And it is a shame in a way, I think, that more young people don't do it. I think the whole title is a bit like what it says on the tin isn't the most attractive thing, but actually even for primary school children, like the story around, you know, within RE, but also as they get older, I think a lot of young people would probably be really, really interested in the curriculum if they had that opportunity. So I guess what we need to do is keep supporting those schools that are open to that conversation.
Yes, and I think that is a growing and changing picture as it's more around partly philosophy and ethics and that wider view of the world. I think our young people are interested in that, and that move away. It's not just about the study of religious faiths.
Exactly, it's about, you know, values and beliefs. And actually, if we've learnt anything from the Youth Cabinet, it's the things that they're so passionate about are often grounded in values and equality. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that report. It is very, very interesting, and the survey is a good piece of work by the sounds of it, so that's great. Okay, so that is noted, and I think that brings us to the end of this meeting, another last one of 2023. I'm sure we'll have lots of fun next year. But in the meantime, I wish everyone a very, very enjoyable Christmas break, whatever that looks like for you. Thank you very much for all your hard work and for coming to this meeting. Thank you.